It's a Sherman again from Tempo Trend Studios, beautiful Victoria, BC, and it is hot in here tonight. I'm trying to keep the traffic noise down in the back. I think you appreciate that. I know I do, but it's hot. So if only my playing could match that, it's going to be a good evening here. Well, we're on number 19, and I'm going to review a couple things, and then I'm going to explain another new component and then the following installment will be number 20, during which I will kind of do an overview and answer some of the most frequently asked questions about this concept of improvising, what some of our objectives are, and maybe just a little peek at what the future can bring. So if I were to reopen this again, which I hope to at some later date, you'll have, hopefully you'll be at a higher level with your playing. If you are, then I'll be happy if that occurs. What I like to do though is to kind of wrap up this installment at an even 20 and let it simmer for a little while. Just see what this does. From my perspective on it, I'll get some feedback. You guys can send some comments into YouTube and see if I'll try to respond to them if I see them, you know, and I'll try to amend some of the things in the future, or try to address some of the things in the future that you think might be lacking or that need further explanation, maybe at a greater depth. Again, to restate, one of the main purposes of these videos was to give you a peek into some other aspects of your playing, lay the foundation, of course, for the major, minor, pentatonic, some of the modes, and develop a sense of style about your playing, to say something, which to me is the ultimate shredding. When you're playing a great line, that to me is shredding. Playing a lot of fast spaghetti, I'm sure some people will be impressed. Someday we'll have awards for the fastest guitarist, the loudest guitarist, the flashiest. Well, they ain't gonna beat me with these hats I wear. But let's take a look then at something I touched on last time. I don't have a loop for it, but I did it on the last installment, and it was the secondary blues in G. And I called it that because it has that secondary dominant on the 6th chord. So in G, the 6/7 would be an E7. Now if you remember in our diatonic rows for G, if you use cowboy chords, the 6th minor is E minor. And how often do you hear that? Relative major minor. But there's no E7 in there, but in the blues you'll have, they may even make a Jimmy chord on it, which is nice, you know. So there's cycles that occur in the blues that can take it to a little different area than just your 1-4-5, which is what we've used, was the standard 12-bar form. So I presented the secondary blues in G, for which I used, I won't restate the whole thing, but I used a G6, I used a C9, and then later on I had an E7. You can go up here and do it there. If you dare to use the Jimmy chord, that may affect the scale that you use. So for now I kept it to a generic E7. You could put a 5th in the bass. For that you're going to use the snake charmer scale, this form. So coming off the G, so all I wanted to touch on here is to restate that if you go back, and if you have been doing that and you were on number 19 and you're playing along with that, or you made your own little loop, the sheet will be posted again, by the way. So everything is diatonic and in our science that we knew, except for that E7. And when you're coming from G6 to E7, what I'd like you to do, you only got a couple, like a bar of each. You want to do something that wraps up the G. If you did like an ARP on G, then the borderline comes for E. So if you just make yourself a loop of that, hear it. If you're playing well, my theory is, if you're playing a strong enough line, you don't need a lot of backup. And the trios of all sorts, blues, jazz, whatever, have proven this, that if your lines are strong enough, people fill in the chording almost for themselves. You can hear it. If you just do this long enough, if you just go, maybe you go this way. So try to find the pathways, and this draws again on that chromaticism that I've said you have. So if you're coming out G, and then you're in the E arp, E7 arp, over which you can lay the, and a little goes a long way with that snake charmer thing. If you're using it in arm music forms, you could really get carried away doing, you know, that's not the goal of this, but those notes are there. You just have to, that might be enough, just that one note coming off the G, and it's going to sound great. And the other thing is, down below when you see the Dorian mode and Mixolydian mode listed, I should be showing you the sheet instead of me looking down at it, but in this area here, where the A minor 7 and to D7, that kind of turnaround, that's a unique feature. Usually that would be a 5 chord to 4 chord, aka D7 to C7. You have this area here, you might want to try throwing in, along with the Dorian mode concept over the A minor and the Mixolydian on D7, you might think of those as, in terms of the arps that they are. So here's an A minor 7 and a D7, or D7 up here, wherever you want to play it. You might go, and you can kind of hear that. Just make a loop of it. Go down here. Notice how I came out on G at the end of that. So jazz guys are doing that all the time. Work that into your own flavor. So the 2 minor 7 to 5/7 change, that's, you ask any jazzer, they'll say that's essential. You have to be able to handle those nuggets of 2 minor 7, 5/7, 5/9, could be anything, to the 1, and it could be a 1 major 7, could be a 6th, could be a major 7, all the same, just a question of semantics and flavoring that you want. Okay, so I just wanted to touch on that just a little bit to let you know I didn't just drop that bomb of the secondary dominance chart in your lap and say, good luck folks. So I hope that gives you a little more clarity on that. Now, the next thing of interest is, I talked about the diatonic rows and I presented this sheet. I'll try to be better about doing this. The sheet, last time, because G is our favorite key for all the things I've shown you, I'll double back and take it through C and just explain one more time, because this modes thing, it just seems to, you know, boggle people's minds, and it will if you let it. So remember what I said is that the scale, in this case I'm going to do the key of C. If you wrote out a C scale, if any of you know notes enough to write them out, just write a simple C scale in whatever register you want, and stack thirds on each of those notes. So on C you'll have C, D, E, E, F, G. That's a triad. The first, third, and fifth forms that triad. You'll notice that it creates a major chord. If you do it on the D, D, E, F, F, G, A, that creates a minor chord. That's just a natural phenomenon that occurred as our music system evolved, the way we stack tones and the way we subdivide tones. So it's a fascinating story, and I think you get into theory, it doesn't have to be dry. My purpose here is not to get you to become theoretical whizzes. I'd rather have you learn practical theory. And to that end, each of these chords was built, restating what I just said, off a scale tone. So C, D minor, E minor, and such. So the scale that gave birth to those chords has to be the right scale, essentially, to improvise over it. And that makes our world a lot easier. So if we think of it as each of these component chords, constituents of this key, only needs the food of the C scale. Now, that doesn't guarantee a great idea or a great solo, because again, soloing is based on a lot of things more than just being the right scale at the right time. You see a lot of eggheads coming out of schools, music schools, and they can debate with you about this or that theoretical point. You still have to get it on your instrument and find a great note at that time. And sometimes you don't want to land on the tonic note of the chord, like the note of the root of the note. Maybe you want to be one fret away from that and then go back. That adds tension. But the essential thing is to know that those scales are home base. So that's playing, as Charlie Parker once said, the great saxophone great, how do you feel about playing far out? And he said, not interested. He said, I'm still trying to learn to play far in. So I'm one of those guys. I want to play far enough in that when I go outside, I know what it means. And it has to create an effect that I'm a desired effect. So those scales, and I have the looper I'm just going to put on here. I'm going to play the looper with a key of C, and I'm going to show again that the scale works, but I'm not going to be too careful about what I land on. There's my favorite word again, target, the targets. You'll notice that the targets are going to sound best when you land on notes that are in the chord, and if you know those chords across the neck, you'll get a little flicker of the chord of the moment while you're noodling. So if you know your scales well enough to know your C scales, just move your G scales around. Play them any position you want to. Shift around. All the way around, okay? So I'm just going to jam along with these, and here is the song. It's coming in on a, and you'll notice that I used jazzier chords. I just made them uptown a little bit. I used major sevens. 2, 3, here I go. C major, Ionian mode, Dorian mode, Phrygian mode, Lydian mode, Mixolydian mode, Aeolian mode, Locrian mode, back to Ionian. Okay, so here I go. None of that was memorable, I freely admit. It was just me noodling, and I double timed it in one spot just to show you. And for some people, that might be what they'd want to do, and that would mean something. That doesn't say much to me, but it does tell you what is required food for each of those chords. Nothing that I played there was outside, what I call outside. It was just far in, as we say. It's just a C major scale, but it gives me a lot of avenues to pursue what would be a good line. So if I took some of those chords out of there and just maybe did a C major 7. Oh, that raunch keeps coming on. I don't know why. There I go. So that would be a 1, 2 minor, 5, 7. So very common in jazz and other pop forms. So if you had that kind of thing going on, then you could target better. You might play something like that over C, and then when the D minor came, and then when the G7 came, and then back to C. So you can almost hear that with me going around the corners. You can hear how that would work and tie in with something. So there you go. That's two keys now that I've covered. I did the key of G last time, the key of C. So you know modes. So modes, as I see it, a mode is the effect created by the mother scale against each of its chords that it created, each of its babies, if you were. So the mother scale, C in that case, is the right food for each of those chords, and you can call it by its mode name. So if it's a D minor chord happens to be going on at that moment, you can call it the Dorian mode. But it's technically a C scale, okay? If it's a G7 chord, one of the members of the family, and a C scale is going on against that, you can call that the Mixolydian mode. I hope I've nailed that down for you, because I don't want to hear one other person come up to me and say, I'm still confused about this modal stuff. For now, memorize the scale, the mother scale, play it on a loop against each of its constituent chords, and think of the name if it helps you, and put that on file. The more avenues, as I say, the more access points you have, the better player you'll be. You don't want to get too clogged up with theory though. Just understand how it works and move on. Get your hands to create something. I'd rather hear music than talk about it. So, okay, so I'm going to take a little break here because I got one more thing to do. I'm going to shut it down for just a little bit, and when I come back, I'm going to talk about the melodic minor scale. Okay? Be right back. Okay, here's a song I think you'd be familiar with. I've just made a patch, and okay, so I'm not going to be doing slide, just wanted to get that sound in your head. So I made a little patch here of the C major 7, A minor, F minor 7, G7. Now, this could be a tough song to play over if you don't know this next scale I'm going to present, which is the harmonic, sorry, I got the harmonic scale in my head, the melodic minor scale. Some people call it the real melodic scale, melodic minor scale. I'll tell you why that is. In classical literature, the melodic minor scale changes. It goes natural minor on the way back. So going up, they'll alter a couple of tones, and then they go back to the what would be, I guess, for us, the Aeolian mode. So, but in jamming, the chord tones don't change, so you want that melodic minor to be the same whether you're ascending or descending. So consequently, we're going to call that the real melodic minor. Okay, so in that sense, we have I've given you 5 forms. This is my Koscalarp thing. Outtake page, print out page from my, and so I have a whole bunch of choices here. I'm going to take the 3rd row right here for a minor 6. So a 4 minor, this is F minor, wants to be a minor 6. It has that flavor. You can really feel it, and it sounds good. It seems to work, and so for that we use the real melodic minor scale. And I'm going to show you the one in the 3rd column here. So when you look at the printout of this, it's the 3rd one in the counter. You can still use the whichever F minor or F minor 6. There's an F minor 6 here in the 1st position like this. You don't have to use that. That sounds a little bit harsh. You could just use, or you could use a minor 7 before you go to your G7. So in short, we have C major 7, A minor, F minor or minor 7, and then G7. And I'm going to do 2 cycles, and I put it on a loop, and I hope it'll play for us. So I'm going to use primarily this one right here, the 3rd column, as I said. So I'll get this going before I run out of time here. So you'll have and if you hear that, or if I play or this, notice if I don't do that, here's what you get. Here it goes. Ouch. I just played pentatonic major. Oh, that's bad. I'm just playing C major scale. So when I get to right here, so you can hear that. Hopefully you can hear that. So if you just did this one lick, which I try to do, and I fumble a little bit, but so you can hear the chord change there. So okay, so you're going to need that. So whenever you have a 4 minor situation, and Sleepwalk is a great one to learn, just learn that song. You'll notice a lot of very talented guitarists run for cover if that comes up on a stage jam and somebody say you want to sign out for the night at a stage jam, they'll start into that. As soon as it goes, they'll say, oh yeah, I can play with that, and you'll see somebody's eyes when the solo comes around going, oh, wait a minute, I can't bluff my way through with just pentatonic major or it's certainly not. I've heard guys do that, get really harsh with that. I think you'd have to be really careful how much minor pentatonic you put in there. A little bit, little pinch, little tiny pinch. But on the 4 chord, that's where I'm going to be watching. So if you know your, so if you're playing along, then the minor, and then G. Okay, so this is just getting this established. I think you're going to find many times when you could use the real melodic minor. But remember, think minor 6. So if you had a minor 6 chord shown, then that's exactly the scale you want. If you don't, you've got some choices here. Now look what we had. We've had the Aeolian mode, we've had the Dorian mode, and there are other applications. Somebody was telling me the other day, you should use the E minor, natural minor over that. A keyboard friend of mine was saying that, and he was saying it in some other key application, but that's what it would amount to. So think of the 5 chord of A, and play the minor of that, of A minor, play the 5 chord of that, so E minor. So that creates this kind of thing. That gets you outside, just on the edge of outside, shall we say. So if I had this going, you can hear that. So that's an E minor, even E minor 7 kind of ARP, but you play the E minor scale, you can get into that, and over the A minor against that creates a nice little texture that's out there a little bit. That I would say if you were doing like John Coltrane. And I'm not too deeply steeped in that stuff, but the stuff the Doors did, that's more accessible to some of you rock guys and gals. Listen to how Ray Manzarek does that over those. And those guys were out there watching Coltrane while they were in college, so they were trying to adapt sort of avant-garde classical jazz stylings and riffs and textures into the rock vocabulary, which was very fascinating. I think that they were able to achieve that against the backdrop of some of the imagery that Morrison was doing and everything. So a band that not everybody likes, but the ones who get it, who get into that kind of thing, you can see how they use that, and they created something very unique, I think, to the rock and roll sort of idiom. So anyway, that's all the minor choices. You've got so many choices there. How do you know which one? Well, I told you before, context. Context is a very important thing. Doesn't come up very much in discussions of this kind of thing, but it's the same with lately talking about the vaccines. You know, this is going on, that's going on. What's the context? Were people already sick, or what was, you know, and you all were thinking about that all this year. Well, that's the same thing here. Somebody says, I've got a chord, what do you want to play over it? Well, my first response to that is not whatever scale comes to mind, it's what's the context, what's the flavor, what's going on. So there are a lot of considerations, and when, as an improviser, you have considerations, you have things that you have to do to maximize the effect that you want to create. And so I hope that's given you one more crayon for the crayon box, the real melodic minor scale, to apply to certain circumstances where the other ones just don't sound quite right. And there are certainly many minor scales, Hungarian minor scales, you've got all sorts of things that are out there. Sometimes they will apply, but I think you'll have to get into those specific idioms or create something with that idiom, which I think some of you guys could do. You could get an accordion player who knows some of the gypsy flavors. That might work just fine. But for most of the stuff that I've ever encountered, that you'll probably encounter in our music, I think you're covered now for minor scales, and I hope you can grab a few of those off the sheet. And if and when we return at a future time, I'll reopen the case and I'll show you a few more applications. But for now, you got some work ahead of you, some woodshedding as we call it. Okay, so I think that might be all the time I have. I don't know how much time I had on this installment because I had to take a break, and we'll have to seamlessly patch that up. When I return, I'm going to do the installment number 20, and I will give you kind of an overview of what we've done and what we might look to in the future. Okay, if I return and reopen this case. So I wish you well, and we'll see you very soon. I'll still have the same shirt, but the hat will change. Take care.